This contract is dated May 7th, 1903. Signed and swear to in Chicago, state of Illinois, by Alexander Franklin James and Thomas Coleman Younger. This contract, as pertains to the great Cole Younger and Frank James historical Wild West show, goes on here, 7 performers, may, at the behest of either one of the principal parties, here we go, may be canceled forthwith at any time without injury or penalty to any. That's it, Cole. We can shut her down.
That's the end of it, then.
Seems to be.
Just as well. Don't need the money that bad. Making a show of it, dropping your drawers on stage with wild Russian Cossacks.
Oh, that's Cossacks, Cole. Russian Cossacks, American cowboys, Rough Riders, Indians, Mexicans, and Broncos.
It was embarrassing Rough Riders. Low account carnival trash, pulling pistols in the street, gambling in the hotels, and me on parole. I don't need money that bad.
Didn't make much money anyways.
Public spectacles. Having to go out and sell ourselves. Answering the same questions over and over from newspapers in every town.
You didn't mind that part much, Cole.
Maybe. Maybe you didn't hold up your part of the bargain, Buck. All they ever asked about was Jesse. You wouldn't say a word about him.
Some things you don't want to talk about.
Yeah, some things you do. Not with the newspapers. With us. We never talked about it. Minnesota was just as bad from the get-go.
No need to talk about Minnesota, Cole. Not now.
We're not talking about Minnesota. We're talking about our brothers.
We all lost brothers, Cole. No need to talk about it. Not now. We all lost brothers. We were born into a time when you killed Christian brethren who just happened to live across the state line. After massacres like that, the only one you could trust was your brother. My brother was born into that time, and he was born a full-blooded rebel. He was just a baby when Free Soilers came over from Kansas and started murdering our neighbors. Just a boy when the state militia came to our farm in the early days of the war between the states. They assaulted our mama, almost killed our pappy, and beat my little brother near half to death. A year or so later, when he was already riding with me and Cole and Quantrill, witnessing the most vicious warfare anybody'd ever seen. And after the war, after all that, he turned into Jesse James. And one day, with his wife and children at the breakfast table in the next room, for a small sum of money authorized by the good state of Missouri, 2 brothers shot him in the back.
Unreconstructed rebel, well, that's just what I am. For this fair land freedom, I do not care a damn. I'm glad I feared against it. I only wish we'd won. And I don't want no pardon for anything I've done.
Frank and Jesse James were born in the town of Kearney, Clay County, Missouri. Father Robert was a Baptist minister and a real whirlwind of activity. He was one of the founders of William Jewell College in Liberty, Missouri. Mother Zerelda was a learned woman, and their folks passed on to the boys their love of the written word. Frank was always partial to the works of Mr. William Shakespeare, and Jesse read the Bible his whole life.
And if any mischief...
Go get him, Jesse.
And if any mischief follow, then thou shalt give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. Book of Exodus.
Hallelujah.
Frank.
All right, Jesse, all right.
Jesse favored the Old Testament. Both brothers came with an extra good helping of their mom in them. Miss Zerelda James was one of the most independent, strong-minded women who ever put her family first before God, the devil, and Andrew Jackson. She was a real cuss. But the boys never got to know their real daddy.
I was just 7. Jesse was only 3. But it was the gold rush, the days of 49, and Daddy just had to go.
Mama said he was a real whirlwind.
Had to minister to the fellas looking for gold out there. Think he might have been looking for a little himself, too.
Wasn't in California a year and went and died of the fever, Mama said.
Mama married again. Dr. Reuben Samuel. Pappy, we called him. Treated us good and gave us 4 half-brothers and sisters. Sally, John, Fanny, and Archie.
The James were good people, but they were living in a bad time in the worst possible place.
Missouri folks were good neighbors, but something started pulling people apart right then. The tradition and practice of owning a man like property. Only about 1 in every 10 families in Missouri owned a slave, but 8 in every 10 families had long, deep Southern roots.
Politics started the fire. The Missouri Compromise of 1854 prohibiting slavery in Kansas, walking distance from the James backyard.
Missouri didn't trust that. Didn't want Kansas telling us how to do business, whether we owned slaves or not.
And Kansas didn't much like Missouri getting stirred up about Kansas business, even moving settlers over to the state to try to influence their laws. Ugly words turned into ugly deeds.
John Brown. John Brown, that name gave every child nightmares. Him and his abolitionists came in the night, murdering men who they said favored slavery. And Missouri men started murdering back.
It got worse and worse. Soon slavery became just what started it all. Got to be about defending our rights, defending our farms.
The fight in Missouri was about to become the war in the nation. Missouri Governor Claiborne Jackson was a Southern sympathizer, and even though the state voted to stay neutral, when the cannonballs started flying at Fort Sumter, Jackson started getting state troops together. Congressmen from eastern Missouri, favoring the Union cause, gathered their own fighting men, and the dance had begun.
Across the border, Kansas Senator James Lane was ready for battle with his Jayhawkers, his Redlegs. Their stockings were the color of blood.
With war boiling over and Union troops starting to march down the road, Missouri towns started forming their own home guards. In 1861, 18-year-old Frank James joined the Confederate forces.
Set honor in one eye and death of the other, and I will look on both indifferently. For let the gods so speed me, as I love the name of honor, more than I fear death. It's William Shakespeare, Julius Caesar.
Frank fought in the first major battle in Missouri, the Confederate victory at Wilson's Creek near Springfield.
The Redlegs struck back, blazing a path of pure destruction. They burned farms and plundered the town of Osceola, where Cole Younger and his family lived, murdered a dozen people there.
Frank didn't get to do much more fighting in the regular army. He got wounded out there at Wilson's Creek.
Severe case of chicken pox.
He came home to get better. I wanted him to tell me all about the battlefield.
But it wasn't too long before Confederate troops, what there was of them, started getting it taken to them in Missouri. We weren't going to win here. A lot of boys came back to protect their farms and families from marauding Jayhawkers. Well, the Union offered amnesty to these Rebs if they signed an oath of allegiance. We didn't see any choice. It was the only way to stay and watch out for our homes. But then those sons of bucks turned around and said any man of age had to up and join the Union Army, fight against the South. Wasn't no way that was going to happen. Some boys who'd been home had started small groups to help watch out for each other. Someone hit them or their people, we hit back. So when this new decree went public, a lot of us happened to be ready. We couldn't fight in our army, and we wouldn't fight in theirs. So we took to the brush.
Frank joined right back up. Took up with William Clark Quantrill. Quantrill. He showed how it was supposed to be done.
The Union Army made Missouri a playground for evil, brutal deeds. So we paid him back and more. Then General Henry Halleck of the Union Army of the West said what we was doing was sabotage. We weren't regular army, so we had no rights. If any of us was caught, they took us out, shot us, or hung us.
Guerrillas weren't given any quarter, so they didn't give any back.
We joined up with regular troops now and then. We were with Joe Shelby at the Battle of Prairie Grove.
He saved Shelby. General Shelby was almost captured in the battle, and Frank was part of the group that rescued him.
Wasn't much of a deal there. But Joe Shelby knew what we irregulars were trying to do. And he had an adjutant with him who became a real friend, John Newman Edwards. He was a newspaperman before he rode with the Stars and Bars. It was during my first year in the brush that the war blew through the James farm.
A group of soldiers showed up one afternoon. They thought our family had information about the guerrillas, that we were hiding them and helping out their cause. Hell, what they expect us to do. Pappy and I were out in the fields working, but Mama was at home. She was going to have a baby. They could see that, but they didn't care. They knocked her down, threatened her, called her names you wouldn't call a stubborn mule. Then they came after us. They caught me, held bayonets to my throat. Then they beat me like they were never going to stop. If I'd known what they'd done to Mama, they'd have had to shoot me. But Pappy, they took a rope, put it around his neck, and right before my Mama, they yanked him up till he was hanging from a tree. They let him hang there, then they let him drop, then they yanked him up again. 4 times. When they had enough fun, they told my Mama to say goodbye to him because she was never going to see him again. And they took him away. He was released the next day, but he was never the same. That hanging cut his breathing, did something to his brain, and he was never the same.
And Jesse was never the same. After that, soon as he could, Jesse went to the brush.
Hates the Constitution, this great republic too. Hates the Freedmen's Bureau in uniforms of blue. Hates the nasty eagle with all his brags and fuss. But the lying, thieving Yankees, I hate 'em worse and worse. I hate 'em worse and worse.
Like myself and Cole Younger, Jesse took the guerrilla oath. You have voluntarily signified a desire to cast your fortunes with us.
By so doing, remember that our purpose is to tear down, lay waste, despoil, and kill our enemies.
Mercy belongs to sycophants and emasculated soldiers. It is no part of a fighter's outfit.
To us, it is but a vision repugnant to our obligations and our practices.
Good then.
We guerrillas didn't invent the rebel yell, but we sure did perfect it. It was with Quantrill where I met Cole Younger. During the Jayhawker raid in Osceola, his pa lost most of his horses and carriages from the livery he ran. Not much later, he lost his life on a road outside Kansas City, shot in the back by a Union officer who had a grudge against Cole. Cole and his family were caught right smack in the middle of things.
Soon after Jesse joined up, Brigadier General Thomas Ewing of the Union Army decided one way to hurt us was to hurt our families, demoralize us. They rounded up the women folk of all known irregulars. My sisters, in-laws, cousins, all the younger women were all arrested, hauled up to Kansas City. They grabbed the James women, too.
Our Mama and our sisters, 14 years old, 5 years old, were thrown in jail at St. Joseph's.
They kept my kin there for months, till one day the 3-story building they were holding them in collapsed, fell right on top of them. My sisters didn't get hurt, but my cousin Charity Carr was killed. 4 other women died.
One of them was a sister of Bill Anderson, who I rode with.
Word went round that Union troops tore up the structure of the building, making it weak enough to crumble. Wasn't sure if that was true, but word went round.
After this, Bill Anderson started earning his name, Bloody Bill. And Cole and Frank and 450 other crazed, vengeful men rode with Quantrill on over to Lawrence, Kansas.
There it is. That's Lawrence, Frank. Home of Big Jim Lane, daddy of the bastard Redlegs.
What's the plan, Cole?
I'm part of a bunch be looking for Lane.
You're gonna capture Lane.
No. Gut him. Put his head on a stake. As for the rest of you, lay waste, man. Lay waste.
With a blood-curdling rebel yell, Quantrill turned that town into his version of hell. Jim Lane got word they were coming and hid out in a cornfield, but the irregulars hunted down every man and a few boys they could find and shot them down in front of their families. 150 were killed that day, and Lawrence was burned to the ground.
It was hell in Lawrence, but that's the hell we were in. Jesse was riding with Anderson, who had his own private blood war going. 250 of his boys rode into Centralia, Missouri, terrorized the town, stopped a train that had 25 Union soldiers on board. These bluecoats were unarmed, heading towards Furlough. Anderson lined them up, shot them one by one.
Union Major A.V. Johnston came into Centralia right after we left. He was outraged by the massacre and sent his troops right after us. Hardly one of our boys was even scratched, but 100 of Johnston's men were killed, including Johnston.
He was shot by my 16-year-old brother, Jesse James.
Got me my first officer.
The guerrillas were wicked, but Lord, could they fight. They could ride like the devil and shoot like his demon army.
Me and Frank finally got the ride together. We were with Fletcher Taylor down near Cane Hill, Arkansas. About 30 of us met up with about 30 of them, led by one Captain Emmett Goss. It wasn't much of a battle, and I personally took care of Captain Goss.
I watched Jesse pick out Goss from the crowd and pour round after round into him. Then he turned, and without a blink, picked off the chaplain of the regiment. He was a natural at this work.
The wicked flee where no man pursueth, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. That's the book of Proverbs, Chaplain. Book of Proverbs.
The guerrillas caused a lot of damage to their enemy, but they weren't enough to turn any tide. The massive Union army was marching down through the South at this time, and things were falling apart fast. In Missouri, their troops ambushed Bloody Bill Anderson. Jesse and others escaped, but Anderson was mutilated, his head set on public display. Jesse never forgot the man who led the ambush.
Major S.P. Cox.
They got Quantrell a short time later. They caught him asleep in a barnyard one night near Louisville, Kentucky. He was shot up and died in a military hospital. Finally, word reached Frank and Jesse that on April 9, 1864, General Lee had surrendered the cause of the Confederacy at Appomattox. The war between the states, which had been a bloody part of the James brothers' lives almost since they were born, was over. After the war, Frank traveled west from Kentucky and sought his pardon.
I was down near Lexington, Missouri with a small group on our way to surrender. We were set to by a gang of drunken Union soldiers who opened fire on us just for sport. I got hit bad. In the chest and through the lung, was left for dead. I managed to crawl away, wound up being cared for by farmers.
The rest of the James family had moved to Nebraska by this time because they all knew what dangers would be lurking back home when the war ended. Jesse was brought there to recover. His wound was serious. No one thought he'd make it. If he was going to die, Jesse wanted to die in Missouri, so they managed to bring him back to some relatives in Kansas City.
In Kansas City, my cousin Z took charge of nursing me. Though I hurt bad for a long time, it was okay. Z turned out to be the love of my life.
Some months later, the family finally all got home to Clay County, Missouri. They worked their farm, tried to rebuild their lives, but it wasn't easy.
How are we supposed to do this, Frank? The farm's in pieces. What hasn't been destroyed has grown over from years and I work at it. It's that way all over the state.
Well, at least we're here to work it, Dingus. A lot of families didn't have any menfolk come back at all.
You try to get a loan, you get some money to rebuild. The only way you can get it is to pay this interest that'll make you beholden to the bank the rest of your life.
Damn, darn blessed carpetbaggers. Swoop down here like vultures from the east to get their pound of flesh.
And these Drake laws, what's that? We rode with irregulars, so we can't vote, we can't hold public office, we can't teach, we can't
You looking
preach.
to run for something, Jess?
No, damn it! But we can't get other jobs to help the farm. We can't do nothing. How are we supposed to do anything? And if that ain't bad enough, the damn militia keeps riding through, troubling every farm and every good mother who ever bore or sheltered a southern man.
Yeah.
They're still lynching, Frank. Executing for war crimes.
Yeah.
So, what, Buck? You able to take this? How long? How long are we gonna have to keep dressed horses out there because we never know when we're gonna have to run for our lives? How long? This is our home. They won't let us live here. Surrounded on every side by lawmakers, by bankers, by troops who keep hunting us down even after we've surrendered. We can't keep this up, Frank. We gotta do something.
Yeah. What?
I can't take up my musket and fight 'em now no more. But I ain't a-gonna love 'em, and that is our chore. And I don't want no pardon for what I was and am. And I won't be reconstructed, and I don't care a damn. And I don't give a damn.
Jesse'd heard me talk of my friend from Quantrill days, Cole Younger. It was after Christmas, 1866. Jesse met Cole for the first time.
We gotta do something, Frank.
That's what I've been telling them, Cole.
Yeah. What?
We gotta get some money.
Yeah, right. You and everybody else around here. You know, Frank, I'm thinking of heading west, California. I was there for a while.
We need money now. Here.
It's wide open out there, Frank. People moving in every day.
I know how to get it.
What?
Money.
How?
From a bank.
A bank?
Yeah.
Banks won't loan us any money.
No loan, Cole. We rob it.
Rob it? Rob a bank? Rob a bank? Anybody ever do that before?
I heard that some of our boys during the war hit a bank up east. But that was looting, plundering. They robbed the whole damn town.
Rob a bank. Good idea, Jesse. California, Frank, that's a good idea. I can go out there.
It's a very good idea, Cole. I know the bank, and I know it can be done.
What bank would that be, Jesse?
The Clay County Savings Association in Liberty. They got a lot of money in there. Carpetbagger money. It's 10 miles away, far enough nobody knows us there. And if we do it soon, here in the winter, ain't gonna be nobody on the streets to see us anyways.
So let me get this down right. We ride into Liberty, walk into the bank, ask for their money, and ride back home.
Well, when you ask for the money, you gotta say please.
But Jesse, you're still ailing from that chest wound. You couldn't make a hard ride.
Maybe not, but you two could. I'll go on the next one.
What do you think, Frank?
Well, we might be able to pull this thing, huh?
Cole had a good point there. This was probably the first real bank robbery ever was. Never thought of myself as an inventor. But I guess everybody's got one good idea. Frank and Cole brought in some other fellas to help. All of them from around here. All of them former guerrillas. Went just like we planned. They rode into town, snowstorm coming. Nobody on the streets. The others watched out. Frank and Cole went in the bank. Cole warmed himself by the fire. Frank went up to the counter.
Pardon me, sir. I was wondering if you could change this bill for me.
Then Cole went over to the other teller, and they pulled their revolvers.
Just stay quiet. Do just what we tell you.
We want you to grab all the money you got in here and put it in the sack.
The cashier was too scared to move.
Now!
The butt of Cole's pistol made sure he moved then.
Put all the coin in there.
And you, all the paper, in the sack.
Hey, there's a box of government bonds in here.
In the sack.
Now, get in that vault with your friend. Move, or I'll shoot you where you stand.
Just like we planned, Frank and Cole lit out of the bank.
We left a little too fast. Didn't lock the vault door. That cashier came out and started yelling the bank was being robbed. Some of our boys started firing warning shots. One of them hit a fella on the other side of the street. Killed him. But that's the game we were in.
They sent a posse after the boys. Couldn't catch them. Set a reward. No one knew who done it. Took over $60,000 in money and bonds from that bank. Even after we split it up a dozen ways, it was more money than any of us had ever seen before. Went just like we planned.
Remember that first bank job, Frank?
Sure I do.
Liberty, wasn't it?
I do believe it was. Liberty, that's right.
It was like we were in a different world. Nobody'd ever done it before. You know something? Riding with Quantrill that whole war, I'd never been so nervous as that day.
You nervous, Cole?
No, never been so nervous. Well, till that day. Minnesota, when we rode into Northfield, I had a bad feeling about it.
Yeah, I know, Cole. I remember Northfield.
Is that right? You remember Northfield, Minnesota? What about a week after we rode out of Northfield? Those Minnesota woods, you remember that day, Frank? You remember you and Jesse?
That day. We'd been riding for a week in the blackest woods God ever put on earth. We didn't know where we were, but we knew we were far from home.
Polly, oh Polly, it's for our sake alone. I left my poor old father, my country and my home. I left my dear old mother to weep and to mourn. the outlaw rider and far from my home.
That town in Northfield had shot the gang to pieces. Clell Miller was dead. Bill Stiles, who was going to lead us out of Minnesota, dead. The youngers were all bad. Cole had half a dozen bullets in him. Jim was hit in the shoulder, and Bob was worst of all. His arm was barely hanging on his body. For a week, their posses tailed us in those godforsaken frozen woods. We were short a horse, and Bob was slowing us down terrible.
Hold on, Bob. I know this hurts, but it keeps it from bleeding more. Try to drink some of that water Jim's giving you.
How's Bob doing, Cole? Will he be able to ride soon? We should be moving.
I don't know if he can ride at all.
Well, I can ride out, find some more food, maybe get another horse. By that time, maybe Bob will be
What's
feeling
that,
better.
Bob? What?
There was that one house back there. Maybe we should head back there.
Jesse, ain't no more you can do. Ain't no further we can go. Bob's real bad. Jim might be worse. Infection's setting in his shoulder. You and Frank better take off.
We're not leaving you here.
Right, we stick here. Bob's gonna
This
be all right.
is Bob's idea.
Bob's out of his head. We're not leaving you here. That last posse's close. Listen, we'll head back that way
Frank?
again.
Maybe Cole's right. If we split up, we'll split the posses. Maybe all of us will sneak away.
Frank, I want to thank you for sticking with us these days. Jesse, Godspeed.
And that was it. That's the way it happened.
It was hard to leave those fellas. Came from the same land. Rode together 20 years in some mighty tough spots. Hard.
It was hard to leave them. Had to do it. We could save ourselves.
Had to do it. Had to stick with my brother.
After that first bank robbery at Liberty, a whole slew of bank robberies took place in the towns of Lexington, Savannah, and Richmond, Missouri. While the James probably weren't involved in any of these, it's almost certain that many of the desperados were former guerrillas, friends and neighbors of Frank and Jesse.
We laid low for the better part of a year. Traveled, visited family, spent the Liberty money. And because all of a sudden there was so much competition at home, I decided our next work was going to be in Russellville, Kentucky. Went just like I planned. Had all our boys in the right spots. Frank went in a couple of times before we took the bank, asking them to make change for a bond. They refused him, which made Frank none too happy toward the Southern Deposit Bank. When the three of us went in later, the proprietor, Nimrod Long, refused him again. So this time, Frank used a revolver in Mr. Long's face to back up his request.
Then damn it, Nimrod Long, if you're not going to give me all the money in this bank.
Well, Mr. Long saw that revolver pointing at him, and he started right out running out of the bank. But one of our boys stepped out of a side door and winged him in the shoulder with a shot.
Nimrod was so scared he got up and kept a running. But then another of our boys met him at the back door and clubbed him to the floor with his revolver.
But Nimrod kept it going. He ran right out the back door where he met two more of our boys on horseback. Well, they started blazing away at him, but he just hightailed it right down the street. He's probably still running.
We sure had him covered. By the time Nimrod Long had run out of sight, we had almost $15,000 in our wheat sack, and we were heading out of town. It was a thing of beauty, just like I planned.
Frank, what did I miss here?
Well,
I miss an election or something? Jesse seems to think somebody asked him to take over the vacancy of leader of this gang.
what's on your mind, Cole?
William Clark Quantrell is the last man I took orders from. I ain't looking for another officer to follow.
Jesse's not looking to take over. He's just full of ideas. You know that. He's young.
He's young, that's right. So he's not going to be leading me. You got that?
I got that. But I tell you, that's not the way it is.
I'll ride with you any day, Frank. Well, Jesse, too, for that matter. I'm just not going to ride behind him.
I did some world traveling after Russellville. Wanted to see New York City. Took a boat down to Panama. Met up with Frank in California.
Spent a little time looking for our daddy's grave there. Didn't have much luck.
Cole was down in Texas with his brothers. Near the end of 1869, Frank and I were back home and back to work.
Jesse and I decided to rob the Davies County Savings Bank at Gallatin, Missouri. I went in and asked the bank employee, Mr. John Sheets, to cash a $100 bill. As planned, Jesse came in behind me.
Why, sir, I'll be happy to cash that bill for you.
Well, thank you. What? What is it?
It's Cox.
Who?
Cox.
Who got Anderson?
Yeah.
You sure?
No, I'm not. He's the other one.
What other one?
He was with him. He was with Cox. That's it.
He was?
Yeah.
You gonna kill him?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
The boys grabbed the cash and lit out, but they'd been spotted. For the first time, a bank robbery was blamed on the James brothers of Clay County, and the brutal murder made their names a bit more memorable. It turned out that Mr. John Sheets of the Davies County Savings Bank bore a strong resemblance to a man Sheets rode under during the war, Major S.P. Cox, who led the ambush on Bloody Bill Anderson. So when Frank walked into that bank, he hadn't counted on Jesse's memory for revenge. The murder at Gallatin caused more public alarm at the lawlessness in the state, and with his name now associated with it, Jesse felt it necessary to defend himself in print. He was assisted in the publishing of it, and maybe the writing too, by one of the editors of the Kansas City Times, John Newman Edwards, the same Edwards who rode under Shelby and counted on Missouri irregulars as one of their most valued allies during the war.
Listen to what I wrote here, Frank. What do you think? I and my brother Frank are charged with the crime of killing the cashier and robbing the bank at Gallatin, Missouri, December 7th, 1869. I deny the charge. I can prove by some of the best men in Missouri where I was the day of the robbery and the day previous to it, but I well know if I was to submit to an arrest that I would be mobbed and hanged without a trial. The past is sufficient to show that bushwhackers do not have any show of law in Missouri. But as to them mobbing me for a
As a former Confederate officer and gentleman, current editor of one of the largest newspapers west of the Mississippi, I am going to continue the fight for our lost cause as long as I am able. No longer can I resist with a gun, but now I have a more powerful weapon, the pen. Now there are some gallant young knights still willing to use the gun to strike back at the Union economic machine and demigod. And if we can combine our weapons, though we lost the war, we can still win some very important battles.
But as to them mobbing me for a crime that I am innocent of, that is played out. As soon as I think I can get a just trial, I will surrender myself to the civil authorities of Missouri and prove to the world that I am innocent of the crime charged against me. So what do you think, Frank?
Damn, Dingus. I saw you shoot him, and I still believe that letter.
I published that letter, and thus began the mutual endeavor that gave me a forum for my beliefs and gave Jesse James a place in history. I began following the gang's activities closely. In the spring of '71, 4 men relieved the Ackerbach Brothers Bank in Corden, Iowa of $10,000. My sources said it was Frank and Jesse Cole Younger and an unidentified cohort.
Clell Miller's with us on this one, and I'm hoping Clell's going to stay with us for a few more.
The Iowa enterprise was linked to the James gang, and Missouri Governor Silas Woodson offered the first reward linked to their names, $2,000 for the arrest and delivery of Frank and Jesse James.
A few months later, Frank, Cole, Clell Miller, and I rode into Columbia, Kentucky, and just after it opened its doors that morning, robbed the Grand Bank of Columbia. Not long after, we branched out and robbed the cash box from the ticket booth at the annual Kansas City Exhibition and Fair in Clay County.
As public outcry continued to mount, I took the opportunity to portray these daring, dashing young men for what they were.
Hey, Frank, listen to this one from Edwards. There are men
In Jackson, Cass, and Clay, a few there are left, who learned to dare when there was no such word as quarter in the dictionary of the border.
with them, booty is but the second thought. The wild drama of the adventures first. They ride at midday into the county seat, take the cash out of the vault, put the cashier in, and ride out of town to the music of cracking pistols. Yeah!
These men are bad citizens, but they are bad because they live out of their time. The 19th century, with its barbaric civilization, is not the social soil for men
who have sat with Arthur at the round table, ridden at tourney with Sir Lancelot, or won the
colors of Guinevere. Men who could have met with Turpin and Duval and robbed them of their ill-gotten booty on Hounslow Heath.
Sat with Arthur at the round table, how about that?
Whoa.
Sir Lancelot, how about that? Riding with the Jesse James gang.
My.
After a winter respite, the gang visited the Savings Bank of St. Genevieve, Missouri, and made a healthy withdrawal. Once again, they made an easy escape, Riding swiftly through the wooded roads of their home state, they often found friendly farms to freshen their horses, friendly folks to offer a handy alibi. Because the former Confederates in Missouri felt that these brave highwaymen were striking back at their mutual oppressors. But now these same oppressors were sponsoring a new beast, an iron horse, who was starting to cut a wide path through the state, grabbing land and homes without mercy from their rightful owners. And the James boys were going to stand tall against this new symbol of Eastern domination.
Damn.
Easy, Jesse.
Damn if I have to say it, damn it all. You sure about this?
Yeah, I'm sure.
I thought of it first, though. I didn't know about them. Who was it?
The Reno brothers.
Where from?
Indiana, I think.
Indiana? Damn. You sure?
Yeah. They got about $12,000.
Damn.
Well, look at it this way, Dingus. You're gonna pull the first train robbery west of the Mississippi.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
The gang prepared to rob the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad, and for the first time and only time, there were 4 younger brothers on the job.
We're gonna need more men for this one. Might as well be youngers.
Yeah, but...
John's fine, right? He did all right in St. Genevieve with us.
Yeah, I know.
And Jim's a good man. He did some riding with Quantrell.
Yeah, but that's not the thing. Cole's been trying to talk Jim into this work for a while now. Jim's heart isn't in it. He just wants...
Jim should be able to decide for himself.
But Bob can't yet. He's just a kid. He just reads the newspapers and sees the glories. He looks up to you. You're his hero. I don't know if it's
What do you
right.
say we let Cole worry about his brothers? All right, Frank?
Yeah, fine.
All right?
Yeah. Might as well be youngers.
But just as many thriving enterprises fall short when they enter a new line of commerce, the James Younger Gang's first foray into railroads was less than successful.
Along with the Youngers, Clell Miller was back. Bill Stiles and Charlie Pitts came along for the first time. We needed them. Lord above, we were going to take a train. We picked up word that it would be carrying $75,000 in gold from Cheyenne.
We stopped it at Turkey Creek near Adair, Iowa. We ripped up some rails, and as the train came around the bend, pulled the last rail out with some rope. We thought that would stop it.
But the engineers saw the busted track, tried to put that train in reverse. Didn't work. The engine and some baggage cars went off the track and turned over. Killed the engineer.
Didn't mean for that.
We went in, grabbed a strongbox. Only had a couple of thousand in it.
We missed the train with all the gold.
Didn't go well for us. But it was our first railroad. Next time, it was going to be different.
Next time, it was the Iron Mountain Railroad. There'd never been a train robbery in Missouri. We were going to fix that.
The Iron Mountain's Little Rock Express had left St. Louis early the morning of January 31st, 1874. It was due to arrive at Gadd's Hill about 100 miles south later that evening.
But we got there first. We rounded up everybody at the station and held him out of sight.
We learned our lesson from Iowa. We didn't tear up no rails. We just put a red signal flag on the track, figuring the engineer would stop.
And so he did. We grabbed the conductor and engineer and sent Cole down to talk to the passengers.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly what you think it is. This is a robbery. We want no bloodshed here. We certainly don't want to meet any sharpshooting heroes from among you. We're holding the train crew as hostages. If anyone on this train attempts to trouble us in our work, please understand we will kill those hostages. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Jesse and I jumped into the express car.
Show your hands. In the air. Higher.
Look here. This is registered mail, and they were trying to hide it.
Shouldn't have done that.
We grabbed anything that looked good in there.
While Frank was filling up our sacks, one of the mail agents went for his gun.
Jesse took care of that.
Sir, the gun. Put it down. Right now. Yes, right now. Not that fast. Put it down. Right now. Slow. That's it.
Then we got the key to the safe and cleaned that out good. I noticed Jesse writing something in the train's receipt book. What'd you write in there?
Robbed at Gadd's Hill.
Then we went into the passenger cars.
Evening, folks. This here's a portion of the robbery where you get to help. And your jobs are to hand over to us any money, jewelry, or other valuables you might have with you. But before you get too alarmed, understand we will not be relieving the lovely ladies on our train here tonight from anything belonging to them, ma'am.
Let's have a look at your hands, sir. Ah, this man's a working man. He's surely been spending his days toiling on his farm or other honest work. You'll keep your money too, sir.
Here's some of the rich ones over here. Now, we'll be taking just about everything these boys got on them.
We saw a couple of suspicious types that we were pretty sure were railroad men, or bank officers, or both. Those we took everything from, including their clothes. Made him strip down to their underwears.
Filthy, fat carpetbaggers.
Hey, this man here's got a real nice watch, but he says he's got a real sentimental attachment to it.
If he's telling the truth, let him keep it. If he's not, kill him.
You telling the truth, Park? I do believe he is. You keep that watch.
Whoa, now. Here we have Reverend T.A. Hagbred.
Reverend T.A. Hagbred? Reverend, pray for us.
Before we rode out of there, Cole shook hands with the engineer.
And remember, sir, always stop whenever you see a red flag.
Then Jesse handed that engineer a letter, telling him to deliver it post-haste to the St. Louis Dispatch. This is what he wrote.
The most daring robbery on record. A southbound train on the Iron Mountain Railroad was robbed here this evening by 5 heavily armed men, and robbed of, fill in the correct amount here, dollars. The robbers arrived at the station a few minutes before the arrival of the train and threw the chain on a switch. After they robbed the train, they started in a southerly direction, all mounted on fine-blooded horses. There is a hell of excitement in this part of the country.
Jesse didn't invent train robbery, but he sure did perfect it.
We robbed that train, didn't we, Frank? Just stopped it and robbed it.
Yes, sir, we did.
Oh, we were some bad boys, weren't we? We had some good days. Didn't we, Frank? Some good days?
Oh, yeah.
They were mostly good. Mostly. Had some bad days, too.
Yeah, I know, Cole.
You know. Is that right? You remember that one time? After Northfield, in the Minnesota woods, you remember, Frank?
It'd been like target practice in Northfield. Clell was dead. Bill Stiles, who was going to get us out of Minnesota, he was dead. All the youngers were hit. Bob was bad. A bullet almost cut his arm in half.
With a cold wind and darkened clouds, we rode into that town. The letter rained hard upon us soon. The sky was coming down. There was many a mangled body left in the streets alone. I am the wanted outlaw and far from my home.
We ran for a week, stealing food, stealing horses. Went round and round in circles in those black woods. Raining most all the time. Posses kept coming. I don't know how many men they had after us. We were running, but we couldn't last like this. Just couldn't.
Hold on, Bob. I know this hurts, but it keeps it from bleeding more. Try to drink some of that water Jim's giving you.
How's Bob doing, Cole? Will he be able to ride soon? He should be moving.
I don't know if he can ride at all.
Well, I can ride out, find some more food, maybe get another
What's
horse.
that, Bob? What?
Maybe we can find one of those squarehead farmhouses to hold up in a while till Bob's
I
feeling
told
better.
you, Jesse, I don't know if Bob can make it any further.
Then Frank and I are going to have to leave you here. Just the two of us, we got a chance to get away. We got to take it.
Well, why don't you just skedaddle then?
All right.
Hold on. We can't leave.
We don't
that
have a
here.
choice, Buck. We stay here, they're sure going to get us. We got to go. Splitting up, we all might be able to get out of this.
Cole,
Let's be getting, Frank. We'll leave you boys an extra shotgun.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Jesse James.
Cole, listen.
You can get out of this, Frank. But you're welcome to stay.
Gotta stay with my brother.
Me too.
And that's the way it happened. That's the way I remember it.
After that train robbery at Gadd's Hill, the Youngers went back to a ranch they were starting in Texas, and Frank and Jesse turned their attention to domestic matters.
Frank, it's been more than 10 blame years now. Z's been awful patient. So we're gonna do it. We're to be married.
Jesse, that's good. That's real good. But how's her mama and Uncle John feel?
Well, they're not much on my chosen profession.
But Z told them we just elope if they didn't bless us.
Jesse got married in April 1874 at the home of Z's sister in Kearney. Our Uncle Billy was a Methodist minister, and he was supposed to do the ceremony, but he had a few questions for his black sheep nephew.
Uncle Billy, you can't believe what you read in those newspapers or what you hear from the law. You know they're all Yankees, and if it rains out, they're gonna blame it on a former Stars and Bars man. Uncle Billy, you know me since I could stand upright under a mule. You think old Jesse could do all those things they're saying?
The wedding came off beautiful, and a couple months later, I tried it myself. Married Annie Ralston from Jackson County. Annie was a school teacher, had a Bachelor of Arts degree from Independence Female College.
Now this boy had to elope. Old man Ralston was a Confederate man, but he didn't hold none with Frank's present activities, or with his daughter marrying into it.
Annie left her folks a note. It said, "Dear Mother, I am married and going west."
Well, that's that Bachelor of Arts training.
We all hooked up for honeymoons in Texas.
We were happy men, wives by our side. Who knows? Maybe it won't be too long before there's some little ones coming around, huh?
Love is not love which alters when an alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever-fixing mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken.
Is that Shakespeare?
Uh-huh.
That kind of happiness couldn't last for the James brothers. Just like the bloodshed and terror that had preceded their life of crime, there was an ever-tightening noose, a deadly lawman on their trail.
We didn't know it then, but by the time we were married men, the Pinkerton Detective Agency from Chicago had been tailing us on and off for 3 years, ever since that bank in Iowa.
Pinkertons were bounty hunters, law for hire. After our first train robbery, somebody, the railroads, hired them again.
Mr. William A. Pinkerton predicted they were going to bring us in easy.
Said the local law couldn't do it, but they could.
Pinkertons had a motto.
The eye that never sleeps.
But William Pinkerton didn't realize how deep the roots, how deep the loyalty ran in Missouri. And those who didn't admire the boys feared them. After Gad's Hill, the St. Louis Dispatch predicted that the James Younger gang would never be taken alive, and that they'd take a bunch of the citizens making up the posse with them.
Notice how all of a sudden everybody's predicting things about us?
I predict there'll be more.
One other thing Pinkerton didn't count on. The men he was after had combat experience of the most vicious sort, coming out of the most brutal war there ever was. These men weren't just troublemakers. They were soldiers.
Pinkertons made their moves just a few months before the weddings.
A detective, John Witcher, came into Liberty planning to go over to Mama's home, get a job as a farmhand, work undercover.
Brilliant plan. Smart.
Well, that's the Pinkerton.
Yes, sir.
He caught the train for Kearney that night.
They found him the next morning.
Shot in the head 3 times. Close range.
After this, the Youngers and James laid low, only showing up in public for Jesse and Z's wedding, where the bridegrooms were all heavily armed. Then there were the copycat robberies, where the James gang got the blame or the credit, depending on what newspaper you were reading.
Frank, listen what the Lexington Caucasian wrote about us.
That wasn't us in Lexington.
Yeah, but it's good. Their fame has become national. The whole country has rung with their daring and hardihood, defied the whole power of Missouri, laughed at her governor and mocked him. They have captured and pillaged whole railroad trains, dashed into town and cleaned out banking houses in broad daylight. Detectives who have undertaken to ferret them out have been slain, sheriff's posses have been routed, and here it is, Robin Hood.
Oh, Lord, Jesse.
Robin Hood, how about that?
Publicity like that didn't set well with the Pinkertons, whose untarnished reputation was getting a little rusty with their promise to get the James. And then the gang rubbed their noses in it in December 1874. They took down the Kansas Pacific Railroad near Muncie, Kansas.
The governor of that free, bloody state and all the railroad men were like mad dogs.
We weren't going to come over and rob their train in their state.
The railroad put up rewards.
The state of Kansas matched it.
And the Pinkertons decided it was time to escalate the battle. Through the treacherous help of a neighbor of the James family farm, Daniel Askew, they planned their attack. Acting on a tip that Frank and Jesse were visiting their mother, they surrounded the James farm on the night of January 26, 1875. A burning object came breaking through the kitchen window of the farmhouse. The Pinkertons later insisted it was just meant to smoke the residents out. Others said it was a bomb. Whatever it was, it exploded. The blast tore the right hand and most of the arm from Zerelda, Frank and Jesse's mother. And a piece of the fiery debris hit 9-year-old Archie Samuels, the boy's half-brother. Despite Dr. Samuels' desperate attempt to save the boy, Archie bled to death that night, and Frank and Jesse were nowhere near the farm.
Poor boy. Poor little boy. I want to kill him, Frank. I want to kill them all.
I know.
But I don't think he'd want me to. Not today. I don't want... He was a good boy.
Yeah.
Mom's gonna miss him.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what we can do, Frank.
Let's go bury our brother.
What a friend we have in Jesus. All our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Thank you, man. Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
Thanks for having my family like you've been.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you for your sympathy.
One of the gang that bombed the house left a gun behind. Had some letters on it. PGG. Pinkerton Government Guard.
If the James gang had enjoyed public sympathy before this tragic incident, as persecuted victims of a government conspiracy, they got almost everybody's sympathy now. A resolution was even offered to the state of Missouri proposing a fair trial for the gang and full protection for any of them that turned themselves in. But in April of '75, 3 months after the bombing, any government leniency towards the James would vanish.
So, is it done? Jesse?
And I looked, and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death. That's Revelations, Frank. Revelations.
Daniel Askew, the James neighbor who'd helped the Pinkertons, was found shot to death. With the danger that it hit home, the gang moved their families out of harm's way. Jesse and Frank, with their first babies due, moved their wives to Tennessee. Jesse taking the time to do some thinking and some planning. In spring of 1876, the James brothers met with the Younger brothers in Kansas City.
So, Jesse, little Bob Younger's engaged to be married.
Yeah, wants to settle down, get a place of his own. One problem, though, doesn't have much money.
Well...
He said, though, if he could get in on one big job, get a stake, he'd quit the business forever.
Yeah? Well, that sounds fine, but where's he going to find a job like that?
Damn you, Jesse.
Cole, where's your brothers?
Downstairs, drinking. Frank, they don't know you're here yet. I wanted to talk to you first.
Yeah, what's that?
Minnesota.
Minnesota?
You don't know.
Know what? What about Minnesota?
That's where we're going, to rob a bank.
In Minnesota? Is that what we're here to talk about?
Yeah, right now. Your brother invited Bob to go up to Minnesota with him to rob a bank. A big, beautiful bank. One last raid, then Bob can up and quit this stuff forever. Invited Bob without talking to me first.
Bob's his own man, Cole.
Bob's a kid. He don't know the business like we do. Minnesota's too far. We don't know the banks. We don't know the people. We don't know the territory even close to well enough.
Bill Stiles knows Minnesota.
I don't know Bill Stiles close to well enough. You do.
Bob wants to go. I want him with us.
No, you want me with you. You knew I'd never go on a crazy ride like this, Minnesota. But you knew if you talked Bob into it, then I'd have to go. Now watch out for him.
I didn't talk Bob into it.
No? Well, he's going. And that means I'm going too. Unless you stop this thing right here.
We're going to Minnesota, Cole. With or without you. Now, I'm heading down to have one with Bob and Jim. Frank, sorry it was sprung on you this way. It's going to be a good one.
Who's he think he is? What does he think he knows that we don't know?
Jesse's done pretty well making the plans.
He's starting to believe those newspaper stories about it.
What's Jim doing here? I thought he was out of this. He was in California.
I sent for him. I said Bob needed him. I knew he'd come. Bob knows how bad Jim wants to live a regular life. I thought if he saw how he was forcing Jim back into this, he'd back out. But Bob's hell-bent to go with Jesse one more time, get enough money for his new wife and farm. That means Jim's going. That means I'm going to Minnesota.
We were going to Minnesota. Besides the Youngers and Bill Stiles, we had Charlie Pitts and Clell Miller riding with us. We needed money to pull a job like that, so we stopped the Missouri Pacific Railroad near Otterville. Took $15,000 home. Minnesota traveling money.
It was the middle of August, 1876. We sold our horses, took the train up to Minnesota.
Nice way to travel. The railroad.
Well, I hope it's safe.
We split up into two groups and scouted around up there.
Posed as regular citizens. Pretended we were interested in buying some cattle or maybe some land.
Ate in some fine restaurants, had a few drinks at the local saloons.
Roamed around St. Paul, Red Wing, Northfield. Scouted their banks.
Well, maybe Jesse had something here. This is some prosperous country.
First plan to take the bank at Mankato was all set up. But there were too many people in the street. And I thought someone in the bank had recognized me.
Leave it to Jesse to think he was so famous somebody in Minnesota would recognize him.
Finally settled on Northfield, the First National Bank. It was the afternoon of September 7th. Bob Younger and I were going in the bank first. Frank would follow.
Clell Miller and I would watch from a bridge outside of the town.
Jim Younger, Charlie Pitts, and Bill Stiles were down the road a piece. While we were in the bank, the boys would watch, come in and help if they needed to. After we left town, it'd be Bill's job to lead us back home.
I was surprised when I saw Jesse and Bob go into that bank. Jesse didn't want a lot of people around. The streets were full.
We pulled our guns when we got inside.
We're gonna rob this bank. Don't any of you holler? We got 40 men outside.
None of the 3 men in the bank said they could open the safe. They said the banker was gone. They didn't know the combination.
Open that door damn quick or I'm gonna blow your head off.
I went over to look at that safe.
One of the cashiers tried to shut the vault on Frank.
Damn, man.
Almost crushed his hand. We threw that man to the floor and Bob put his gun to his head. Where's the money, he said. Where's the money or I'll kill you.
Meanwhile, outside, somebody was headed toward the front door of the bank. Clell got there first and stopped him.
Then they said it was a time lock on that safe. Wouldn't open anyway, anyhow.
But this fella knew right away what was up. They're robbing the bank, he said. Get your guns. I got down to the bank. I told the boys inside.
Hurry up! Give me the alarm!
Then one of the cashiers ran to the door. Bob shot him in the back. He fell outside hollering, "They're robbing the bank."
By this time, it seemed every man in Northfield had a gun and was firing it toward the bank.
We heard the shooting commence, but Jesse wanted that money. He dragged one of the cashiers over to the vault, put the gun to his face, and told him to open it. They still wouldn't do it. Jesse was so mad he shot the floor.
Gunfire was everywhere. Bob's horse was shot down. As Bill Stiles rode toward the bank, he was shot right through the heart.
They're killing our man! Get out here!
As we were leaving, I turned back and Frank had that cashier down who tried to crush his hand. He shot him through the head.
Jim was hit in the shoulder. Then I saw Clell get hit in the neck and go down. As I went to help him, I got hit in the leg.
As Bob went into the street, he saw his horse was dead, so he tried to grab one of the dead men's horses. They got him right in the arm, almost tearing it clean through.
I saw Bob go down, rode over and pulled him up on my horse with me.
Jesse and I were able to get on our horses and start moving. Cole managed to hang on to Bob, even though he was hit twice more.
Charlie Pitts was shot too, but stayed on his horse. Under the cover of our guns, all the Youngers and Charlie bleeding from their wounds, we got out of Northfield.
After the robbery, we'd planned to cut the telegraph wires so no alarm could be spread. Now we couldn't do that.
After the robbery, Bill Stiles was going to lead us out of that state. Now he was dead.
We stole another horse outside of town, but we weren't in good shape. Cole was hurting, Jim's shoulder was bad, and Bob was worst of all.
That telegraph wire did the trick. Within a few days, there were 500 men after us.
Then the rain started. Cold rain. Didn't stop for 2 weeks.
Cold as it was, the rain helped us. Made us hard to track.
We came close to a few of their posses, shot back and forth a few times, and kept on moving.
A couple of times we came face to face with them. Jesse convinced them we were after the robbers, too.
We rode for a week, didn't get caught. But we didn't know where we were going. And with Bob as bad as he was, we were going slower all the time. Sooner or later, they were gonna get us.
Hold on, Bob. I know this hurts, but it keeps it from bleeding more. And try to drink some of that water Jim's giving you.
How's Bob doing, Cole? Will he be able to ride soon? We should be moving.
I don't know if he can ride at all.
Bob's slowing us down too much, Cole. He's not gonna make it anyway. I don't like to see him hurting this much.
Hold it there, Jesse.
Cole!
Jesse pulled his gun on my brother. I couldn't let him do that. And Frank, watching out for Jesse, had his pistol pointed right at me.
This is the right thing, Cole.
How about you letting me decide the right thing for my brother?
And Frank and I are going to ride out. We might be able to make it.
The great Jesse James. I'll never get him, huh?
Let's be getting, Frank. We'll leave you boys an extra shotgun.
Thank you very kindly.
Cole, now listen, you boys.
You might be able to make it, Frank. But you're welcome to stay.
I gotta stay with my brother.
Me too.
Frank and I stole new horses that night and finally got over to South Dakota after 2 days straight of riding. The Youngers hid for another week in those Minnesota woods before a posse finally surrounded them. They shot it out as long as they could. Charlie Pitts was killed. All told, Jim Younger took 5 bullets, Cole took a dozen.
Bob was hit again, too, but when the gunfight finally ended, he was the last man standing. He took a look around, saw Charlie dead, me and Jim down, called out to the posse. Hell, boys, I'm the last one left. Might as well call it a day.
Though it didn't look like it was possible, all the Youngers survived their wounds. When they were well enough to talk, they were questioned about the other robbers again and again. They never revealed a word about us. Finally, Cole handed one of the lawmen a note. It said,
"Stay by your friends, even if heaven falls."
The Youngers were quickly tried and just as quick given life sentences. They wound up in the state penitentiary at Stillwater, Minnesota.
Frank and I went back to Tennessee, to Z and Annie and our new children, my little Jessie and Mary Susan, and Frank's son, Robert Franklin. I tried various endeavors, corn farming, cattle. Nothing paid too well.
Myself, I preferred ponies, the kind you find at the racetrack. But after a few years of this life, Jesse was eager to get back to business.
Over the next few years, I pulled a number of jobs. The Chicago and Alton Railroad, Glasgow Tourist Stage in Kentucky, and payrolls from a couple of coal mines. I did pretty good, but it wasn't the same.
See, I wasn't ready to go back on the outlaw trail, and all Jesse's old partners were either dead or in jail.
I had to recruit a whole new gang, some who didn't even ride in the war. These new boys, they just didn't get it. I tried to get Frank back in, but even though he needed the money, he wouldn't budge. Till I told him about the train with William Westfall on it.
William Westfall ran the train that brought the Pinkertons to Kearney when they bombed our mama's house. Now he was a conductor for the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad.
He stopped the train at Winston, Missouri. Several robbers went into the express car after the money, while the James brothers went into the passenger car after Westfall.
Frank found Westfall first. He turned away from us, and Frank shot him in the back. As Westfall lay in the aisle, Frank stepped over on top of him and finished him off. That was Frank's last job.
Missouri Governor Thomas Crittenden found himself under tremendous pressure to bring these outlaws to justice. In secret meetings with the railroads, he solicited funding to post rewards for the delivery of, or information leading to the delivery of, Frank and Jesse James.
We were hiding for a while, but soon Jesse went after another train.
Robbed it near Blue Cut, Missouri. Threw together a new gang. Had a young fellow named Charlie Ford in it.
Governor Crittenden upped the ante. Said if any member of the James gang turned in their leaders, they'd get the reward and a pardon for any of their crimes. Jesse kept moving. By the spring of 1882, he moved his family to St. Joseph, Missouri.
Everybody was after Jesse James. With these new rewards, he barely trusted his own gang. All of his old friends were gone. He hadn't even seen Frank for a while. He was tired of running, tired of looking over his shoulder everywhere he went, tired of moving his family from town to town. He'd been an outlaw for almost 20 years. One day in a newspaper, Jesse saw an advertisement.
160 fine acres of land near Franklin, Nebraska, with a beautiful creek running through it. 90 acres of timber, and good educational and religious facilities nearby. Fine enough and far away enough to sound like paradise.
But he needed the money to buy it. One last job.
I planned to rob the bank at Platte City, Missouri on April 4th, 1882. I'd only need 2 men with me. Charlie Ford be one. And I'd agreed to give Charlie's little brother, Bob, who never robbed a bank before, a chance at this one.
On the morning of April 3rd, the Fords joined Jesse for breakfast. Afterwards, they strolled into the parlor. Jesse, for some reason, took his gun belt off. He never did that, not even in his own house.
Then he noticed a picture on the wall that wasn't quite straight. He got up on a stool to put it right. Bob Ford shot him in the back of the head. As he and his brother ran from the house, Z and Jesse's children came in and found him there. James was dead.
Do thy friends despise, forsake thee? Take it to the Lord in prayer. In his arms he'll take and shield thee. Thou wilt find solace there.
Several months later, with the help of John Newman Edwards, I surrendered my gun and holster to the governor of Missouri in Jefferson City.
Governor Crittenden, I want to hand over to you that which no living man except myself has been permitted to touch since 1861, and to say I am your prisoner.
They wound up trying me for 3 different robberies. Didn't convict me for any of them. I was a free man. Charlie Ford didn't like the sound of that. Seems he was convinced that I was hunting the men who killed my brother. In 1884, terrified and tired of running and hiding, Charlie Ford committed suicide.
His brother Bob Ford kept running here and there throughout the West, wound up running a saloon in Colorado. In 1894, during a brawl, some local took care of Bob with a shotgun.
I did my level best to stay out of trouble, trying to make a decent living for my family. Tried a little bit of everything. Still liked horses a lot. Worked as a starter and timer at racetracks all over the country. Lived in St. Louis for several years. Worked as a doorman at Butler's Burlesque Theater. Floor walker at famous department store. And over at the fairgrounds racetrack during the season. And I thought about the Youngers a lot.
Bob Younger died of tuberculosis in prison in 1889. In 1901, after 25 years of jail time, Cole and Jim Younger were finally pardoned.
Just before Cole got out, I finally put all my Shakespeare study to use. Joined a traveling troupe of actors. Was in some fine productions. The Fatal Scar and Across the Desert. It was exciting. Not as exciting as jumping a train, mind you. Not as good money either. Well, that just naturally led to me and Cole and that Wild West show.
You're right, Frank. You're right. No need to talk about it. Not now.
So what you gonna do?
I don't know. Go back home, I guess. You.
I think I got a few more shows in me. I might just go back into the Fatal Scar.
Well, you break that leg.
I surely will. I surely will.
Frank James lived till the age of 72, dying in 1915 in Kearney, Missouri. Cole Younger was devastated by the death of his best friend. Cole died 1 year later in Lee's Summit. When the James Younger Wild West show appeared in Columbia, Missouri, the Herald newspaper carried an article that Frank kept handy for most of the rest of his life.
This much can be said of the Youngers and the James. They were the products of the most vicious and terrible warfare of which history tells. For 4 years, they were in constant carnival of blood and devastation. It was enough to turn men into demons. At the close of the war, they found themselves outlawed. They kept on in the life they had led, justifying themselves on the ground that they were still in the enemy's country. Their crimes cannot be excused, but they can be forgotten now that they have been pardoned under the law, and can and should be covered with that Christian charity which hides a multitude of sins.
And if any mischief follow, then thou shalt give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe.
Oh, I'm a good old rebel. Now that's just what I am. For this fair land of freedom, I do not give a damn. I feared against it. I only wish we'd won. And I don't want no pardon for anything I've done.